Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the podcast that shares ideas on how to upgrade your lead generation. Here is your host, Glenn Schmeltzley.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the show that explores how we can upgrade our lead generation. I am so glad you've joined us for this show. Quick reminder that you can get this show on any podcast listening app that you use, as well as Apple Podcasts. I hope you caught our last episode that was on how to integrate video in your marketing. If you didn't get a chance to do that, please go to our site at funnelreboot.com and listen to it. In this episode, we talk about how to write persuasively for prospects. To delve into this, I've brought in a marketing agency owner. He's the founder of Websuitable, an ROI-driven digital agency serving small businesses all across Canada. Like many in the agency space, he's seen enough bad copy to almost expect it. But when he was researching some product purchases for himself, he found that he was being drawn in by the copy that they wrote. It wasn't hard-hitting, buy my product, direct response writing that worked on him. It was copy focused on helping a buyer, giving answers to their problems. He feels this use of copywriting is just as effective in terms of generating leads because it speaks to everyone, not just those who are in market to buy from you right at this moment. And he's felt so strongly about how it works that he swung his whole agency around to this writing approach. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to today's guest and welcome him to today's show. Why don't you start by telling us who you are?
All right. Well, first off, thanks, Glenn, for the introduction. And I'm the head of growth at Websuitable.
And your name is?
My name is Nik Paprocki.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Really nice to have you. And I know about Websuitable, and the aim of the company is to develop websites and also to work with companies who probably are not doing the kinds of communication that they should be doing with their clients. Tell me, if you could summarize it, what do you think most of us are doing wrong with how we try to explain our value and explain what clients need when we try to write for the web?
Okay, so first off, what we do at Websuitable is we work with clients and implement, simple and automated lead generation strategies. And what we've seen in the past and what most businesses that we work with and what we see most often out there is that most businesses are focused on a small percentage of the market of prospects who are ready to buy. And in any given market, that's typically about 3% of people that are kind of ready to buy and give you their money with very little effort on your part. And what we see often is people kind of completely disregarding the other 97% of that market, which is, includes people who are, kind of your window shoppers or people who are looking to buy but aren't ready just yet, people that don't know about what you offer yet and how you can appeal to them and, provide value for them. And then kind of how do you do that, right? So, in essence, in a way, it's kind of inbound marketing, but I like to call it value-based marketing more so because, the foundation of it is trying to provide more value up front than any of your competitors are willing to give, right, in your market, and kind of position you as the go-to authority, right? And by providing value and giving more to your potential customers and appealing to your ideal buyer by providing that value up front, right? And removing those barriers and stuff. And that's where we've kind of started using and shifting that focus and using direct response copywriting as kind of laying the foundation for getting people that we're looking to target and how do we appeal to them, right? What's motivating them to buy? Like what questions are they struggling with that they need answers to like right now? And what's going to solve that for them, right? So we'll get into that, how you can kind of uncover those gold mine opportunities in your market and where do you go to find that information and where do you go to leverage that kind of info, right? And figure out, it's like, you've got buyer personas, you've got all this stuff that, you've put in place for your marketing. So really leveraging that and figuring out what questions these people are struggling with and putting together content in the form of high value content offers on your landing pages and how to convert that traffic, right? And through an offer essentially is more so kind of the direction that we're taking.
Sure.
While we're still trying to help our clients target that 3%, we're also putting in place strategies to help them nurture and appeal to the larger market, which covers the other 97%.
I think I got it. And so if we just imagine that we've stretched out 100% of prospects out there, and we've got at the one end the 3% that are ready to buy today, and we're ready to serve them. In fact, we're open 365 days a year in our businesses to serve those customers. But what you're saying is, if we look across to the rest of the spectrum, we need to think of where those 97% are at. Some of them will be at I'm looking at the various vendors, and you're one of them, and I'm trying to evaluate you guys. Or before that, I don't know if I can successfully pitch internal people in my company on this solution. To maybe before that, I don't know what a good solution looks like, to maybe I don't even know that I have a problem, right? And so they're splayed all across this long spectrum. And what I'm hearing you say is that we need to think of how copywriting can address the needs of each one of those at each stage that they're at. And that way, when they're moving along and they move into that magical 3%, they'll be ready to talk to us because they've been talking to us all along.
Yeah. I mean, in essence, it's like taking, cold traffic, right? And you're spending money on ads, you're investing in SEO, whatever traffic channel you're using, right?
Yep.
It doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, wherever you're sending that traffic, if you don't have an offer that appeals or converts profitably, there's really it's kind of a waste of money, in my opinion, to be sending traffic to a website that isn't really appealing or very specifically focused on kind of the mission at hand, what you're trying to solve for the person, right?
Yes.
And I think that's where a lot of businesses that we work with don't have that kind of implementation in place. They've got traffic sending to service pages or their homepage or things like that, and they're really missing out on appealing and providing value, which is kind of that foundation of getting your conversion rates higher by providing value up front. And that can be in the form of like free reports. It can be signing up for webinars. It can be whatever it is in your marketplace. It could be a quiz. So there's quizzes people can take, just things that we can kind of guide people along path to action, right?
Yeah.
And without that kind of path to action and that guidance, without kind of using the copy as the foundation for that, I really don't know what else there is to kind of motivate anyone to buy. I mean, you can invest a lot of money in design elements for your website, make it pretty and all that, but what motivates people to buy and people are reading is going to be copy. So it's really important to kind of pinpoint what the dreams are. And I call it the hopes and dreams of your ideal buyer, right, in that market, because
that's a great point.
What's going to keep them there?
Sure. And wouldn't it be a wonderful world if more marketers could be fixated on the hopes and dreams of their prospects? I think you asked the question earlier, why do we stick with the copy that says it's about us and let's talk more about us, and don't you want to hear everything there is to know about us? Those numbers and the buying of traffic to drive to copy like that, it might make some vanity metric spike up. And I think that's the problem, is we live in a fishbowl in marketing. We have numbers that are more about how our website is impacted and what it means for us. But we actually have to, if I'm hearing you right, step way out of that and ask, okay, well, in the prospects world, like if we didn't even exist, what would the prospects problem still be, and how can copy serve that?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly that, really, because I think a lot of what's happening that I see is a lot of focus on, vanity metrics, right? And the next silver bullet solution or some sort of hack.
Yep, the latest channel.
Or whatever, right? Whatever channel it is. But I think at the end of it, what's just often overlooked is just the offer, right? And an offer that appeals and can convert your traffic profitably at the end of the day. And the only way to really do that is to kind of step back and not really talk about your business. And, oftentimes, small business owners, they don't have a ton of money to invest, right? And they don't really, and even in today's age, which we're in 2020, and I'm still shocked that how many businesses don't get the value of online marketing and are still take a ton of convincing just to kind of get them to invest in even a basic website.
Or they ported over copy that was on a fact sheet or just a brochure, right? Yeah. Totally out of context. And it's just pasted right into a landing page.
Exactly, right? And by doing that, oftentimes the copy's talking about the business. We've been in business since 2001. We've got 10 employees. We are blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And while that's nice, but in reality, nobody really cares, because at the end of the day, people are not persuaded or influenced by that. We all have kind of a self-interest at hand, right? When you're looking for things online, like you're looking for a solution to your problem. And when you land on a page that's talking about how great the company is, while that may work to convert some traffic, I haven't seen that work as a method to kind of really appeal to the larger masses out there and consistently work in a way of like direct response copywriting that kind of drills down and really speaks to that person and uses, instead of I or we, it's you and your, right? Your problems, what you're struggling with, how this kind of stuff. It's really just speaking to them and making it very clear kind of that you're almost speaking to them alone and not speaking to them in a mass kind of setting.
So there's that phrase, direct response copywriting. I know, are a fan of some folks who've done that sort of thing in the past. Are there any examples you can think of that typify that type of writing that speaks to you? I know there's even some luminaries way before the web got here that you think highly of.
Some of the guys today that kind of I stumbled across, when I was figuring out this stuff and kind of coming across it in the beginning, and it wasn't really clear to me what it was just yet, right? I didn't really understand that it was necessarily a strategy or a way of doing this, but it appealed to me, right? And it's like, and some of the greats in this industry right now, at least on the digital side of things, and I'll touch on kind of like the historical elements of it, but today you've got guys in the space like Ryan Dice of Digital Marketer, right? You've got Neil Patels, you've got, all these guys, Russell Brunson of ClickFunnels. And if you really like look at what they're doing, I mean, it is kind of funnels and it's all the kind of the technical elements and the software and all the fancy things, right? But at the foundation of it, if you look at their copy and you get pulled in by it, right? And then it leads you into a funnel. But in order to get you in there and then sell you in the funnels later, notice how their copy is not geared about how great they are or how great their funnel system is or anything. It's
how many milliseconds it works in.
It's not talking about technical jargon and all that. It's really focused on, they've identified who I am when I'm reading it, and that's it. That I'm struggling with those issues, and they're speaking to it, right? And that gets me to kind of take action, and then leads me into their funnel where there's a whole other element to it, right? Where you kind of can get sold, and kind of the narrative and stuff can kind of shift at that point. But I think in terms of a lead generation strategy, direct response kind of style is a really good way to kind of address and appeal to your ideal buyer.
Sure. So why don't we jump in, because I know you actually see it breaking down into the various elements of a page's copy. So why don't you take us through what those are, and then we'll talk about how each one of them can be used in this way.
Yeah. So essentially, I guess at the base of anything, it starts with a headline, like a good headline that'll snag your reader's attention. And the principle of direct response copywriting is essentially to craft a headline that makes your readers want to keep going, right? And an example of this, we chatted just before, we were talking about how a headline by David Ogilvy back in the day, before digital, right? Kind of referred to as the godfather in a way of, modern advertising.
For sure.
And the quote was, or the headline, was, at 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in the Rolls Royce comes from the electric clock.
Okay.
Now, that's an interesting headline, right?
For sure.
It kind of appeals on a few different levels there. I think one, it's intriguing, it's clever, Like it captures your attention. It almost makes you think for a second, right?
Yep.
Because you're like, that split second when I first read it, I was like, oh, and then I'm like, oh, like that's clever.
Yeah.
Like,
when you read it
right
to
away,
me, I instantly pictured myself sitting in the car with my hands on the wheel.
And in silence.
And I'm on a country road somewhere and I'm roaring around, but I hear the ticking of the clock.
Right. And like, so then that leads in to a long form copy. That was the headline used in a newspaper. I forget the year.
But
it was considered, and I read that he considered that headline, and based on the results and stuff that it drove, was one of the best headlines that he ever wrote, and the action that they got from that, right? Because they were appealing to a certain buyer, right? Rolls-Royce is not a cheap car, and they're appealing to a sense of lifestyle and a sense of, and kind of identifying that prospect and their ideal buyer in that headline alone captured their attention, right?
Yep.
And then got them to read this long form copy. If they had done that same long form copy without that headline, they probably wouldn't have generated the same results, because there would have been nothing to kind of draw that person in with an intriguing headline. So at the base of all this is figuring out kind of those clever headlines. And a good place to start is kind of like, how often are you at the checkout counter? I was at Metro yesterday.
Yeah.
It's whether it's the Prince or the Queens or whatever going on, or publicity.
Or
it's
Hollywood
like those
celebrities.
headlines are incredible.
Yes.
Like, I mean, yes, they're gimmicky in a sense.
Sure.
But you can kind of draw inspiration from that in a way to kind of put together your headlines, right?
Yeah.
For your web pages.
But so it has to do the same job. Our web page,
captures
the headline on it, has to,
right,
at least get my attention the same way that the magazine at the checkout is. Not to say that my website is going to be talking about the intrigue with the royals, but I'm going to be be using the same methods. Yeah,
essentially,
and putting words together in a very dense way that catches.
Yeah. And if you look at it too, like if you go back to the traditional, whether it's magazines or newspapers, anything like that, like if you don't have that headline, chances are you're not going to get the same kind of intrigue level to have somebody at least start reading that. And they are long form pieces of copy. Right? You start reading magazines and different things, and
once you get into them,
once you get in, right? And that's where I think that
so we have to think of our web page as being the same thing. I guess what we get wrecked by is there's an infinite amount of real estate on a website, right? Mm-hmm. Like I could write War and Peace inside of my website.
Yeah.
But we are still reckoning with the fact that human brains are the exact same ones that were around when old style newspapers and magazines existed. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't matter that I have infinite real estate. What matters is I only have so much of a reader's bandwidth.
Yeah.
And I have to start there. But if I earn my way through things like the headline and subheads, then I can get into long form copy.
That's where I 100% agree. And that's where I think the value comes from this, is because attention spans are at an all-time low. If there isn't something that like captures somebody's attention, chances are they're on to the next thing.
Yep. So we were imagining that the copy and the headline together are enough to make a very strong amount of interest, and the quality is there. The person who reads it sits back after reading and goes, okay, I either understand something better than I did before, something that was very complicated to me is now rather simple, I know what to do next. What do we do with that kind of energy and goodwill that we've built up with them?
Yeah, I think that's an area as well that it lends itself to giving a lot and providing a lot for that person. So like by having long form copy, which is in essence direct response style copywriting, right? It informs, it persuades, and it convinces somebody more so, right, than a blurb of text, and that's all the opportunity you've had to get your point across, right? So if you kind of capture on what it is that they're looking for and what appeals to them, what they're struggling with, and what they're looking for the answer to, like if they've clicked your ad on Google, for example, and they've typed in, they have an intent-driven search behind it, right? They're looking to solve something. Pretty much 100% of the time, they're looking for a solution. And then you drive them into your landing page with an appealing headline and then lead them through a piece of content that touches on all the points that, you know, you've identified that they're looking to solve.
Sure.
Right? So it piques the interest, but it keeps them engaged in a way too. And it gives you more opportunity by having long form content to actually answer those questions.
Yeah. Or if I could even use the terms, fulfilling the promise, right?
Fulfilling the promise, removing potential hesitation or barrier.
Yeah.
And like you said, like just generally, like I believe in just, and that's where I've had that paradigm shift from the past and how I was doing things into today is just, it's just I'm put goodwill and value into your marketplace, like above all, like try to provide more value to your customer than anybody else in your market is willing to do, right? So give them more insight behind the scenes, give them more of a look into what they're going to get from your strategy call, what they're going to get in terms of what they can expect when they sign up for your program. So there's all sorts of these kinds of things where I think I'm not necessarily hiding things behind like a wall anymore, and just kind of unveiling that and giving kind of that interest, right?
I have kind of evolved my thinking on this too, because I do think at the end of, let's say, that block of text, bottom of the page, there needs to be a call to action. Mm-hmm. But the way that I think of it now is not so much that there's a bait and switch that, you know, I got you here only to find another way to get your email and spam you to kingdom come. Yeah. But what I like about what you said, I'm hearing that you're realizing, especially for any of us who are, let's say, providing a service where we have written the copy, the answer is something that we had in our storehouse of knowledge because we provide this service. And you give them the immediate answer that they have, but you know that almost all the time that somebody has that immediate question, there's a larger need. And that need eventually will have to be taken care of by someone's work, maybe your service. Mm-hmm. And so I think when you kind of, as you said, expose more of what you have up front, you almost, it earns you the right to ask at the end to say, well, if you would like to keep in touch with us or sign up for something or just have a little bit more engagement, it's because we believe that at some point in time, the best way that we can actually help your problem will be to serve you, right? But for the time being, a little bit of knowledge is going to do you, but it leads to that larger thing, and it's such a natural progression. It's not you turn a corner and, whoa, where did this, sales pitch come from?
Right.
It's just a natural, slow thing that they see coming all the way.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly kind of one of the strategies that we use is to, you've got, like I mentioned earlier, you've got kind of that percentage of the market, small percentage that, you send to a page and they're going to take a desired action right away. Whether it's to like book your consultation call or buy your product or whatever it may be, right? But there's also that large portion of the market where that aren't ready yet. And then how do you appeal to that? Okay, well, that's where we set up landing pages that are appeal to helping and providing value. And like you said, like it's not kind of used as a way to, as a bait to kind of get them in. You've got this great page put together and you've got this offer, but as soon as they do it, you don't deliver on the promise, right? And I think that's where skepticism is rampant online because things like that do occur. And it's kind of used as kind of just like a lead gen like bait tactic, right? And then someone's like sales calling you, pitching you like right away before you've even clicked off the page, you're already getting your phone call. See, like I think that kind of approach to things, obviously it doesn't work. I don't like that. It's not what I do or would suggest doing. Whereas like there's different kind of funnel strategies in the sense that you're targeting that 3%, you're targeting 97%, and that 97% that you're targeting where you're providing goodwill and value, continue that into your email marketing campaigns, your email funnels, your other kind of marketing tactics, right? That happen behind the scenes and continue that kind of lead nurture and that approach, right?
Yes.
And continue to provide that value and then use that opportunity as well to kind of showcase the results you've got, the case studies. You can start talking more about you, sending video about the results you've generated for this company or how your product has helped solve this. And because in the beginning, we're providing value, we're giving them information to help solve their problem. They've downloaded, let's say, a free report or they've watched a webinar or something where we've addressed that problem and we have fulfilled on the promise. But now you can also take that opportunity to kind of start selling from there, right? And that's how I think you can kind of appeal to that larger market who weren't ready to buy, right? You kind of like nurture them a little bit more, and that kind of leads into your email marketing campaigns and the different strategies you have in place there. That's kind of the approach to things.
It sounds like you have a clear sense of what kind of information will be helpful at each stage. And, you do have to write a fair bit, but, when you have that for those, the people will gravitate to the content that is right for them. And as they move to the point where they enter that 3%, you're right there, and they totally understand how you're going to help them.
Yeah. And like you said, like it kind of acts as a way too, where you've kind of appealed, I call it again, the larger market, right?
Yep.
The other people out there that aren't ready to buy. And it moves, and by doing that and providing value and goodwill and just providing content and value in a non-aggressive way, right? You didn't get them in; they weren't interested yet. So you need to understand that, right? In the kind of approach to things, and kind of you can't just hard sell someone right away. It's like it's about building and nurturing that relationship, right? And providing value and answering their questions. And it requires all sorts of elements that go along with that, right? Blog content, articles, videos, whatever it may be.
Cool.
But it's a good way, like once they've come in the door and you have that larger market, they're more willing to buy from you at that point because you're moving them up the pyramid, right?
Yes.
In a way, to get closer to that 3%.
Yes.
By doing that.
Yeah. And I love how you've kind of left each of these pieces of content almost like they're, little gifts or breadcrumbs that are just easily available to them. I think there are a lot of companies that will try to put this information out, but they haven't sequenced it at all. And someone would have to rifle through the catacombs in the basement and all of the storage lockers that a company has somewhere on their site. And that's way too much work for somebody who's busy and who just wants an answer to a question. So I like how you've said it's not only got to have this finished product, but it's got to be set up in the right way. And what I want to talk about now is how we can get to that. You've obviously figured out how to do it for your own site and for your clients, but what can you tell our listeners about some steps that they would take to make, to actually construct the copy and have it sitting like this?
Yeah. So a good place, I think at the fundamental element to doing this is to really figuring out who it is you're trying to appeal to. Because without that, you don't really have any kind of narrow focus on how to speak to that person. And if you don't have that fundamental element to it, you're kind of just throwing yourself out there again, right? And you're just shouting from the rooftops, about your business and buy from me, whatever it may be. You're just trying to appeal to everyone. And I'll bring this into kind of more relevant to digital marketing. Like if you're running your paid ads campaigns and your Facebook ads and other things like that, and you're targeting different segments of your market, right? And different people or maybe different products or services or maybe the solutions that you can provide for those different parts of your business are different and they appeal to slightly different people, right? And I think that's where you can leverage a lot of businesses still today don't really put in place their buyer personas and their marketing strategies, right? But you can leverage a lot of that foundational information and kind of take it a step further and then go on Google, start typing in what people in your market would potentially be doing to find you, for one. Go on to industry forums, look for, things that people are talking about. And this isn't really just to service businesses. It can be e-commerce sites as well. A good place to look at is Amazon reviews.
Yeah, good
See
point.
what people hate about things or what they are disappointed with or what didn't hit the mark on the product that they purchased before that your product can solve for them.
Yes.
And take those things, start an Excel sheet, talk to your frontline warriors and knights on sales calls, right, on the battlefield, and figure out what those objections are and store everything in an Excel sheet and absolutely everything you come across in your market, capture it and keep a huge log of things, right?
Great
because
advice.
Then you kind of start figuring out the same kind of pain points and struggles that people are having.
Yeah.
Right. And then once you can kind of uncover that, then you can start to put together your copywriting, your landing pages, your offers, and what you're going to use to appeal to those people and provide the answers and the value that they are looking for. So, I mean, it changes in different markets depending on what it would be. But I think at the foundation of it is really just kind of understanding what it is you can provide value for.
Sure.
And then figuring out an offer that you can use to appeal to that ideal buyer that you have, right? And that's an easy way to do it. Like that's something that I think most businesses can relatively quickly figure out and put together. I mean, I think after talking to, sales calls, like what I do when we start working with a client and they have a sales team is first thing I say is let me talk to your sales guy.
Yep.
Because they're the ones that every day are handling objections and I want to know what those objections are.
Yep.
And then we're going to take that and we're going to use that in your copywriting, your direct response copywriting to address that and kind of remove those barriers. And those are kind of the things that you can kind of start picking at and uncovering and using and appealing to people to kind of take action on your site, right?
Yes. Yep. There are a lot of good tips that you've got in there, and I think that it starts to become natural on how you might insert some offers, little offers along the way for them. For some reason, what I was thinking of is, like a business to business opportunity. Let's say you are into infill development of commercial office space. So you're a company that does that, and you could just make it all me. But if we follow your approach, it sounds more like you are pre-thinking about all of the people in the stages of before, during, and after they would have to get a new office space. So you can meet someone wherever they're at. Most of them will be, like you say, in that larger market where they're in the before part of the journey. And you can almost to a T identify, the things that you haven't thought about, you have this goal. This goal is 3-5 years from now, you want to be in this place and you want it perfect. You want everybody enjoying it. It's great for productivity. But what you haven't thought of are the things along the way that you're going to hit. I have. Let me tell you what they are. Let me tell you when they normally surface. Yeah. And let me tell you what you can do to try to hedge those and get over those humps. And if you kind of lay it out that way, I'm hearing, by going into things like sourcing those forums and sourcing those past testimonials or going to the frontline people, you're going to get all those nuggets and be able to properly help people who are in that position of pain see what's over on the horizon that you can help them get to.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And like just to add to that would be kind of like someone looking for an office space or looking at investment properties or things like that, right? And what I would suggest doing is taking that information that you've gathered, putting together that copy, and hiring a copywriter to do it.
Yeah, I think so.
For one, because a lot of times, like, we're not all trained copywriters and understand kind of what really motivates people to buy and how to use that technique to like ethically persuade someone, right? To kind of take an action. And I think it is a skill that's acquired, and it's a really valuable skill to kind of implement. But yeah, like taking that example that you were speaking of, like for the office space, something you could do in that way would be to put together, like if you're looking to attract investors or business owners to get an office space, we can kind of uncover hesitations or questions that may hold them back from doing so in the market, right? And identifying that, leveraging that information, putting a little report together. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. Like you can put together, like a lot of times you can leverage content from your blogs and things like that you might have written to put together a value piece, right? That is actually relevant to what you're trying to do.
Yes.
In this case, get somebody interested to potentially lease out your office space or buy an office, right?
Sure.
And if you can kind of uncover what's holding them back and kind of give them a free report, for example, they might be more willing to download that free report and learn something than they would be to kind of right away just get on the phone and call you, right?
Right.
So that's kind of where I tie it into, using it in your digital strategy is providing more value up front and kind of leveraging information that people are struggling with in your marketplace and putting together, irresistible offers, I call them, or brain dead offers, where it's just like, why not download it? Like there's no, what, you know what I mean? Like there's no pressure. I'm not getting on a sales call, not doing a consultation call. It's just a free piece, right?
Yes, I'm saying yes in some way, but it's not the big yes that every vendor is hammering on me to say yes to, which is, get the proposal or actually sign the contract. I think, and you nailed it with what's holding them back. We have to, confront that elephant in the room that I don't think those of us who aren't in sales see it, but I think every time a salesperson is brought in on this conversation, they will say, yes, there needs to be some content. We have to talk about the things that they have fear, uncertainty, or doubt around. Yeah. Or else, here's what's going to happen. What's going to happen is the prospect who maybe did put an email address in and maybe, you got a phone number. If sales rushes in there before they're ready and gets them a quote, I guarantee what'll happen. They'll just go dark. And now you've got the company actually expecting revenue for something, and we're all just living in a fairy tale land because that person hadn't had their fear, uncertainty, and doubt addressed. And so one of those things is holding them back, and as a consequence, they will probably do nothing. Or, worse yet, they might do something if your competitor comes along and follows this approach where they handle each of those and actually speak to them and don't let them stay as these unspoken hesitancies.
Yeah, precisely. And it's like, and again, especially for those people that fall into that 97%.
Yeah.
Right? The people that aren't
we can't move them any faster than they're ready to go.
And hard sales pitches
they don't work.
They don't work anymore. Right.
Yep.
I mean, it's really about, I really think it really comes down to really identifying what those hesitations, what those fears, addressing their hopes and dreams in a way. If it's for a business owner, it's it's things like spending time more with their families. It's not worrying about working on the weekends anymore. It's it's things like that can really speak to the human element as well, that people are looking, have real concerns and they struggle with. And I think when you can tie that into your sales machine, which is your website. And you can use your website and leverage it in a way, instead of being a brochure on the internet, to being your digital salesperson that can maybe land you some sales. I liked how you said that before we hit the record button. You said, your website ought to be a 24/7 salesperson for you. Now, they can't do everything that an actual salesperson will do, but the sentiment is there. And I love how you kind of give it as an upside. So, if we don't do these sorts of things, the downside is that we leave people with that fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and it's unspoken. And you might find a good salesperson who, when they're in contact with them, can kind of bring them along, but the website's there all the time. Why not let it do that heavy lifting? Yeah.
It's great for that. And there's the magic of search, which allows people to find the stuff, and hyperlinks that gets them exactly to where they need to be for where they're at. Let's use that.
Yeah. And the thing that often comes up in using kind of long form copy on a website versus not and stuff. And there was actually a case study done on this by Neil Patel.
Okay.
And he ran, he's a huge marketer. We all know
and a prolific writer.
Right. It comes down to a lot of his writing techniques as well. But they found that long form copy tended to convert a lot better than short form copy. Right. So it gave them more opportunity in him to kind of explain the solution to someone, remove those barriers and educate them on what they're getting or what are they looking for, right? So I think it's one of those things where oftentimes, why not implement things like that? Because I think that if you can use your website as a tool to kind of help, turn that, help generate sales for you, you can really do that by using copy. I don't think there's any really other method to do that on the internet and on your website without having really good copy.
Yeah,
at the base of it.
You'd probably put yourself down as Exhibit A for that, because your own site does that. And peel it back for us for just a minute. What was it like before? And, are you happy so far with how this change that you've made and stuck on your own website.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I am. And one of the things is it doesn't come down to just the copy on the website and that's it, right? It helps in a sense that we have more opportunity now to kind of explain the solution, remove those hesitations, kind of speak to the person a little bit more, peel back the curtain a little bit more about what they would get when kind of taking the action we want them to take, right? Which in our case is to schedule a strategy call. That's one element of it. But when it comes to generating leads in a more consistent way, it really comes to the landing page and having that. When we use the long form direct response type of copy on our landing page as well, and we have a high value content offer that we've generated beforehand when advertising and marketing and spending money on Google ads and things, we were sending traffic to our services pages or a landing page, but it was still kind of just hitting and appealing to that 3%, like asking for the sale, right? And you buy from me, look at us, like
right now, whatever, and get this.
Yes. And I think the fundamental shift came when, one, I was exposed to it in a way that this kind of methodology of using copy to really sell someone, right?
So it wasn't a services page on someone else's site that got you interested.
Yeah. So well, I mean, on digital marketing, so like Digital Marketer and all these guys, Neil Patel, like kind of same kind of things. If you go through ClickFunnels as well, you'll see this kind of implementation in place.
And it worked on you.
And it works, right? And it's because I was struggling with something. I needed an answer to that. I downloaded a very simple offer, which is a free report, or signed up for some webinar, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it has to be genuine, it has to provide goodwill and value.
Yep.
And I think that's really where this stuff really comes into play and can really start working for the average businesses out there that are just not leveraging this potential chance or opportunity to kind of use their website as a way to help them generate lead from that, and then tying it into their marketing strategy where they're still running Google ads and they're targeting things and just asking for that sale. But we can also do display ad campaigns, and we can do things that send them to your high value content offer, your free report. You can provide value and goodwill out there, like advertise your value piece instead, right? And build up your email list and things like that. So those would be kind of, I think, the biggest things that I think are often overlooked is just trying to provide that value to your marketplace.
Sure. Though we don't know where someone is along that spectrum at the beginning, if we just play the odds and say, well, let's imagine that they're in the 97% and therefore content will be what they care about, then we can at least start with that. Work later on to figure out exactly where they are. But I like your thinking that, odds on, they're just going to need some helpful content. So go with that. Sure, you can amplify it with paid ads and the like, but go first for helping and let people push themselves down and express to you where they're at. Don't try to force anything a moment before they're ready.
In a way, yeah, essentially. And again, like that ties into all sorts of things that happen behind the scenes later on where you can dig deep into your email marketing systems and your nurturing campaigns, but that's another topic. But that's how you then, because someone might be sitting there thinking, well, I'm putting out this free content piece or I'm doing this and just providing it for free or whatever. But if you don't have a strategy after that to nurture that need, you're kind of left in a place where you're not taking advantage of that opportunity. And that's where it all kind of has to tie in together in a way.
Yeah, and I don't think either of us for a moment are saying that there isn't a hard ROI to this. This may sound all soft and squishy, but as you say, if you have a strategy, we've got analytics in place, we ought to be able to report on how this is actually moving towards our objective. So, it doesn't take away any from that. It's just not holding hands, kumbaya, saying we're helping people just for the good of it. We're not for profits. Yeah. But if we do it properly, we can kind of have the best of both. And for me, I think that it reduces down to the most simple part of we understand that we have a sense of what we need as a human ourselves, right? Each of us knows ourselves. And yet, we're all wired the same way. Yeah. So if we know what we want, we should be able to infer what somebody else wants. It sounds like you made this swing too. You said, on your company's site, it's going to be Nik talking about what Nik's potential customers want. And, you know, it's like our North Star, right? I mean, you really can't go wrong if you just think about it that way. And imagine yourself in somebody else's shoes for a minute and then talk to that.
Exactly. I deal with a lot of business owners that are hesitant to this approach. And the way I look at it is, why not just, if you can, just provide, like, throw it out there, provide the value, provide the goodwill to your marketplace, whether someone becomes a customer or not. Okay, fine. But at least, you know what? At least we're out there. We're putting together valuable content. We're trying to help people, whatever, right? So one, in a way, if you can build that up over time and you become, you know, an authority in your industry, right? By doing that. And, you know, that'll in itself bring with it, you know, trust and credibility for you.
Elevate your brand
down the road, right? So it's really about just stop making it about you.
Yeah. Focus
on helping other people, whether they become customers or not. And that's kind of the approach that I've taken to it.
It's gutsy. It's, like we said before, it's not new, but in a way it's new because we kind of left it there for a long while in, you know, the early days of the web. And now we're back into just understanding how to build trust and give that help, and then at the appropriate moment, move them into the sales discussion. Mm-hmm. And I'm super thankful that you kind of told your story and have explained to us and, you know, have examples of how we can do this for ourselves. Would there be anything as a takeaway, Nik, that you would leave us so that if we want to reboot some of our own persuasive copy that we use, any places you might head us, or would you be able to share with us the list that we went through today?
So I touched on a few of those during the chat, but I think one of those key places to start is to kind of dive into your industry, talk to your frontline people, and just really uncover what people are struggling with. Like, what are those roadblocks? What are the hesitations that you're finding your sales teams having? And then leverage those opportunities to put together your high value content offers, or sit down with your team, put together webinars, whatever it may be in your specific industry that can provide that insight, right? And then take advantage of long form copy on your landing pages. And I don't think there's any secret number of words or anything like that. I think it's just putting together a piece that's genuinely focused on them and addressing their concerns rather than trying to pitch your product all the time. Goes a long way. And I've seen that in our own lead generation strategies where we had, you know, very minimal conversion rates from our website in the past, just trying to drive traffic to a landing page, but it wasn't really a landing page in the sense of what we're talking about today. To, you know, much better conversion rates, you know, by implementing these and appealing to that larger market. So I think, like, I would suggest kind of for businesses out there to really kind of take a step back and try to figure out what it is that they can provide to their marketplace. What's a gap that's missing that they can kind of step in there and provide something to, right? Whether it's in the form of free reports or you put together some sort of webinars or whatever it may be. Kind of addressing and figuring out is step one. And then there's all sorts of elements that go on beyond that. But I think that's a good place to start.
Good. Okay, well, I'll give a quick synopsis of that in the show notes. And I want to thank you again. We'll cap it there, but if you would like to catch those show notes or want to share this episode, we strongly encourage you to. And you can either come to the website at funnelreboot.com, or you can listen to the episode on Apple Podcasts or any podcasting app. And if you really like what you heard, please consider leaving us a quick review on iTunes. And you can get in touch with us on Twitter at Funnel Reboot, or me at HeyGlennS, and I'll include Nik's contact details as well.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter at Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.